I don't remember the exact moment I stopped trusting her. But I remember the night the seed was planted, clear as day. It was a Tuesday, just one of those forgettable weeknights that doesn't usually mean anything. Except this one did. I came back from a business trip earlier than expected. The meetings in Portland wrapped up ahead of schedule, so I caught a late afternoon flight instead of staying the extra night like I'd originally planned. I didn't tell Jessica I was coming back early. I figured I'd surprise her. When I got home, the house was empty. Lights off. No dinner smells, no music playing, none of her usual presence. I assumed she was still at work. Her salon often ran late. I dropped my suitcase by the door and tossed my jacket over the back of the chair like I always did. I was tired, emotionally drained. Work had been stressful, and all I wanted was a quiet night in. I sat down, opened the laptop, and logged into our shared streaming account. We'd had that account since before we got married. It was one of those small things couples share that becomes routine. Separate profiles, sure, but sometimes we'd browse each other's pics. She'd always tell me mine were too serious. I used to tease her about her obsession with predictable rom-coms and beachy dramas where everyone spoke in metaphors. But we had fun with it. At least, we used to. That night, I clicked over to her profile out of habit. I wasn't even sure why. Maybe I just missed her. Maybe I was looking for a sign that she'd watch something we could talk about later. Something normal, shared. And there it was. At the very top of her recently watched list, Waves of Summer. That title meant nothing to most people. But to me, it was familiar because I hated it. Jessica had tried to get me to watch it with her once, and I lasted 20 minutes before giving up. I called it a 2-hour perfume commercial. And she never brought it up again. Or so I thought. There were more recent views too. A string of soft romance movies, some indie film with French subtitles, even a few playlists labeled Evening Unwind that hadn't been there before. I paused. These weren't just random clicks. They felt curated, personal. I felt the first crack of something I didn't want to admit. I closed the tab, opened our shared cloud drive, the one we used to organize our trips, finances, and random couple stuff. I'd gone in there hundreds of times. Everything had always been neat, structured, labeled by year, with folders like Colorado 2021, Anniversary Weekend, and Home Reno Ideas. But that night there was a new folder, titled simply, Summer Evenings. The name alone sent a chill through me. We hadn't been anywhere this summer. No weekend getaways, no beach days. Just work, long hours, and tension. I clicked the folder, and I froze. There were photos, lots of them. Jessica at the beach, golden hour light, wind in her hair, the kind of candid sh*ts that look like they belong in a travel magazine. She looked beautiful, the kind of beautiful that takes effort. Makeup done, hair styled, soft dress fluttering in the breeze. But she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her, broad-shouldered, late 30s maybe, with a sharp jawline and a relaxed kind of confidence that made my stomach turn. In the first few pictures, they were standing close together, laughing. In one, his hand was on her lower back. In another, they were sharing a drink. And then there was the photo, the one I can't forget no matter how much I try. The two of them seated on a blanket, a wine bottle off to the side, her head resting on his shoulder, eyes closed, completely at ease. A timer photo, clearly set up with a tripod or propped phone. Framed, planned, smiling directly at the camera. His arm wrapped around her waist, her hand resting over his. Not a candid, not a mistake, deliberate. That image cracked something in me. Not anger, not yet. Just disbelief. A vacuum of silence in my chest. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. My brain tried to justify it. Maybe it was old? Maybe it was part of a group trip I forgot she mentioned? But no. I checked the metadata, the photos were recent. 2 weekends ago. The same weekend she told me she had a girls-only spa retreat 2 hours away. I closed the laptop and waited. She got home an hour later. Smiling, humming, tossing her keys on the table like it was any other night. I didn't ambush her. I didn't yell. I just asked, "Hey, quick question. Who's the guy in the beach photos?" She stopped, The smile flickered, not vanished, just paused, like a screen buffering. "What photos?" she said slowly, like someone testing the temperature of the room before deciding which lie to tell. I opened the laptop, clicked the folder, turned it toward her. Her expression didn't shift. Not really. Maybe a flicker of irritation. Not shame, not guilt. "Oh," she said, eyes skimming the images. "That's what this is about?" That response. Not confusion. Not regret. Just that tone. That dismissal. I waited for something. Anything. An apology. An explanation. Instead, she scoffed. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. Seriously, it's nothing. It was just a weekend hangout. You know I need to decompress sometimes. God, you're always looking for drama." Her words cut, but her tone cut deeper. She said it like I was the unreasonable one, like I was making a mess out of nothing. I stared at her. "You lied. You said you were going to a spa retreat with friends." She rolled her eyes. "Because I knew this would happen. I knew you'd freak out. This is exactly why I don't tell you everything anymore. You twist it." Twist it? She was in a beachside photo shoot with a man I'd never met, and somehow I was the villain in the story? "I'm your husband," I said quietly. "You should have told me." She crossed her arms, clearly annoyed now. "What is there to tell? It was just a weekend. A friend invited me and I went. I didn't want to argue about it, so I didn't mention it. You need to stop reading into things." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, smiled faintly, and turned its screen down on the table. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't even surprised. She had expected this. And she'd already decided that, if it came to light, she'd spin it. Make me feel crazy, dramatic, controlling. I didn't say anything else. I just nodded slowly, picked up my jacket, stepped outside. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was the sound of a door clicking shut from the inside of my chest. Because I knew right then, our marriage wasn't falling apart. It had already fallen. And she didn't even notice. After that night, everything looked different. Not because the house had changed, it hadn't. The mugs were still on the kitchen shelf. Her sandals were still by the front door. But my perception of everything had shifted. It was like someone had flipped a switch in my brain, and suddenly I was noticing all the things I used to look past. I couldn't unsee the photos. I couldn't unhear the way she brushed me off like a child having a tantrum. I kept playing her words back in my head, like rewinding a scene that never ends differently no matter how many times you replay it. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I need to decompress. It's nothing serious." I started sleeping on the couch. Not because we fought, we didn't. That was the strangest part. It was as if she hadn't registered what happened at all. Like the confrontation never mattered. She moved on like it was a dent in the day, not a crack in our life. And maybe, in her mind, it wasn't a crack. Maybe it was already rubble, and I was the only one still trying to pretend it could be rebuilt. In the silence that followed, I started remembering things. All the little moments that used to give me a strange feeling in my gut. The ones I had brushed off as paranoia or stress or just the natural drift that happens in long-term relationships. I remembered when she changed her perfume. It was around mid-spring. She used to wear this vanilla and sandalwood blend. Something soft, comforting. But one day, I came home and noticed something different. Sharp, floral, a scent that filled the room and gave me a slight headache. I told her that. She laughed and said she'd gotten a sample from the salon and was just trying it out. But she kept wearing it. And only on certain days. Wednesdays and Fridays. Those stood out because they were her late nights. The evenings when she had clients who could only come after hours. I never questioned it, not really. She ran a popular salon downtown, and late appointments weren't uncommon. She always came home exhausted, shoes in hand, hair tousled like she'd been working all day. Except now, when I thought back, her makeup had never looked smudged. Her lipstick still perfect. Her eyes bright. Who wears red lipstick for 10 hours in a salon and walks in looking fresher than they left? It wasn't just the perfume. It was her phone. She used to keep it face up on the coffee table or kitchen counter. Then, one day, slowly, subtly, it started living screen down. Always. Even in the bathroom. Even overnight. I joked once, "What's with the phone paranoia?" She smiled and said, "Force of habit. I don't want to see notifications while we're relaxing." I believed her, because I wanted to. But then I remembered another time, when I asked to borrow her phone to look up a restaurant menu. She'd hesitated for half a second. Not long enough to notice at the time. Just long enough that now, replaying it, I could see her thumb quickly swipe something off the screen. A browser? A message? I didn't know. What I did know was that it happened more than once. The same subtle cleanups. The same hesitations. The same weak laughs when I asked what she was always typing about. But I had explained it away. To myself. Every time. I told myself she was just busy. That I was projecting. That maybe I was working too much and missing things that didn't really matter. I convinced myself I was the problem, not the signs. And there were signs. I remember the time we were out to dinner with friends. She excused herself to take a quick call and stayed gone for nearly 20 minutes. When she came back, she looked rattled. Said it was a client having an emergency. That she didn't want to talk about it because it would ruin the mood. I didn't ask more. I should have. Or the random new password she set on her laptop. She claimed she needed it for work because of a new salon scheduling app. I didn't press her. Why would I? I trusted her. I didn't want to be that husband. The jealous, snooping, overbearing type that demands access to everything. But looking back, it wasn't about passwords. It was about secrecy. And then there was the night she said my name in her sleep. Except it wasn't my name. I had just come back from the kitchen with a glass of water. She was curled up in bed, facing the wall, hair spilling onto the pillow. I was about to slide in beside her when I heard it. A name I didn't recognize. Mumbled. Half asleep, but real. Nathan. Soft. Almost tender. My chest tightened, but I stood frozen, waiting to hear more. Nothing. The next morning I asked. Casual. Light. I joked about it even. So, who's Nathan? She blinked. Nathan. You said his name last night. In your sleep. She looked confused, then laughed. That must have been a dream about my friend's brother. Remember Tanya from work? Her brother's name is Nathan. Weird. That explanation made no sense. We'd met Tanya once. At a work party 2 years ago. I didn't even remember what she looked like. And I certainly didn't remember her brother. But I let it go. Because what was I supposed to say? You spoke another man's name in your sleep, and I want you to explain why. It sounded insane. So I buried it. Like I buried everything else. But now I was digging them all back up. One by one. Piece by piece. Every late night. Every mysterious client emergency. Every flicker of irritation when I asked simple questions. Every deflection. Every time she accused me of being too intense or too in my head. It wasn't just about one beach photo. It was about the pattern I had refused to see. The slow erosion of int asterisk Macy. The distance she created with such finesse that I mistook it for independence. The way she always had just enough answers to make me feel like the suspicious one, but never enough honesty to actually feel close to her. I used to look forward to seeing her name pop up on my phone during the day. But lately, the texts were mechanical. Dry. One-word replies. No more silly emojis. No more, can't wait to see you tonight red heart. Like she used to send. Even just a few months ago. And yet, she smiled at her screen more than she smiled at me. She'd check her phone during dinner. Scroll for 20 minutes while we were watching something. Laugh quietly at messages I couldn't see. And when I looked over, the smile would vanish. She'd say, "It's just a dumb meme from one of the girls," and lock the screen. I believed that, too. I had wanted to believe her so badly that I willingly edited reality to fit the version of her I was holding on to. But not anymore. Now the denial was gone. And in its place was clarity. Brutal, heavy, and impossible to ignore. I couldn't pretend anymore. She wasn't tired. She wasn't busy. She wasn't drifting. She was choosing. Choosing distance. choosing secrecy, choosing someone else, maybe not just emotionally, but physically too. And I had no one to blame but myself for how long it took me to open my eyes. It's strange how you can live with someone for years and still not recognize the person they've become. Or maybe you just stop recognizing yourself. The version of you who keeps pretending things are fine, who keeps making excuses, who keeps waiting for proof that never comes. Until it does. And then you wish it hadn't. After all the suspicion, the hesitation, the nights lying awake wondering if I was crazy, I finally decided to know for sure. It wasn't a sudden choice. It built up slowly like pressure behind a dam. Her behavior hadn't changed since the beach photo confrontation. If anything, she was more distant now. Polite, mechanical. She asked how my day was but didn't wait for the answer. She went to bed early. Her laugh had vanished, at least around me. One morning over coffee, she casually mentioned she had a colleague's night out planned for Friday. A team social, she called it. At the conference center uptown, the one near the river with the glass atrium and overpriced valet. The kind of place people used for business mixers or holiday parties. Not romantic, not secretive. But something about the way she said it, the way she didn't make eye contact, told me everything I needed to know. I nodded, pretending I didn't care. Have fun, I said, keeping my voice even. She smiled and said, thanks, babe. Like we were still us. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. That Friday, I told her I had plans too. Dinner with an old client. She didn't ask questions. She didn't even seem curious. Just gave a half-hearted cool. See you later, and grabbed her purse. She left at 6:42 p.m. I waited until 7:15 before I followed. I didn't rush. I didn't storm out of the house in a jealous rage. I got in my car calmly, plugged in the address of the conference center, and started driving. Not toward answers. I already knew. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed the truth to stop being abstract. The conference center sat beside a quiet park. I remembered it from years ago. We once walked there after a wedding reception, laughing about the ridiculous centerpieces and arguing over whether the cake was store-bought or homemade. That memory felt like it belonged to another life now. I parked a block away and walked toward the park's edge. There was a fountain surrounded by benches, mostly empty at this hour. Dim lighting, the kind that made everything feel more cinematic than it should have. Like a scene you'd watch unfold on a screen. Shaking your head, thinking, how could they not know? And then I saw her. She was sitting on a bench near the fountain, her back to the path. Her hair was down, falling across her shoulders. She was wearing a soft red blouse I hadn't seen before and those ankle boots she always said were too nice for work. She wasn't alone. He was sitting beside her. Same man from the beach photos. Same tan, same confident lean, same easy smile. And the way he looked at her. It was like they shared some secret, some in asterisk Macy that didn't need to be hidden anymore. His hand rested on her knee. She leaned into him like it was second nature. No guilt, no hesitation, no performance. She looked peaceful. And in that moment, I felt something break in me. But not the way I expected. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was stillness, quiet and absolute. I watched from the trees, close enough to hear the water from the fountain but too far to hear their voices. Not that I needed to. Their body language said everything. He leaned in, whispered something. She laughed, touched his arm. Then, he reached up and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. That small gesture, gentle and practiced, hit harder than any confession. You don't do that with someone you're just getting to know. You do that with someone who's yours, or thinks they are. I took out my phone, took a photo, not out of spite, not even to use as evidence. I needed it for me, for the version of me who might, months from now, still try to convince himself this was all a misunderstanding. I needed a reminder, a timestamp. I watched them for another 5 minutes, and then I left. Back in my car, I sat in silence. The photo glowed on my screen. I stared at it without blinking, as if I was trying to memorize it. But I already had. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. Her message was simple. I'll be home soon. Dinner? I stared at it for a while. No apology. No mention of staying late. No sign that anything was out of place. I typed back one sentence. No. There won't be any more dinners. Then I put my phone down and drove home, my hands steady on the wheel. It wasn't some dramatic movie moment. I didn't scream or cry or slam the steering wheel. I didn't pull over to sob into my hands. There was no soundtrack, no slow fade to black. Just the quiet realization that something I'd spent years building had crumbled quietly while I was still busy holding up the scaffolding. When I got home, the house felt colder than usual. I sat on the couch in the dark, my phone silent beside me, the photo still open. For a while, I just stared at the ceiling, trying to process the shift. The moment where a suspicion becomes reality. There's something sickeningly final about it. Not because it surprises you, but because it confirms that you weren't paranoid. You were right, and now you can't unknow it. I thought about calling someone, a friend, my brother, anyone, but I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to be comforted or pitied. I didn't want anyone telling me, "You'll get through this," or "She doesn't deserve you." That wasn't the point. The point was that I had seen the truth. With my own eyes. She had taken something sacred, our history, our trust, our shared language, and handed it to someone else like it was hers to give. And the worst part? She didn't even bother to hide it. She sat on that bench with her whole heart open, her smile relaxed, her body language effortless. It wasn't a fling. It wasn't a mistake. It was something she chose. Repeatedly. Comfortably. And me? I was the loose end she hadn't bothered to tie off yet. The man she still texted out of politeness. Out of obligation. Maybe even guilt, though I doubt that now. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was restless, but because sleep felt like giving in. And I wasn't ready to retreat. Not yet. I spent most of the night sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her empty side, the sheets still tucked in. It looked staged, like a hotel room after checkout. No imprint, no presence. By morning, I had made up my mind. There would be no confrontation, no begging for honesty, no carefully worded questions. I had seen everything I needed to see, and now all that was left to do was act. She came home like nothing happened. Keys jingling in the lock at 10:14 p.m., the door opening with its usual soft creak. And there she was. My wife. Or at least the woman still wearing the title. Dressed down in a long coat, holding a small shopping bag in one hand, her purse slung over the other shoulder. Calm. Relaxed. Not a flicker of guilt on her face. As if I hadn't texted her hours ago that it was over. As if she hadn't spent the evening wrapped in the arms of another man. As if I hadn't seen it, photographed it. She stepped inside, dropped her bag gently by the shoe rack, and looked up. Her eyes met mine where I sat on the couch. The lights dimmed, the TV off. Silence filled the room, the kind that feels like it weighs something. Her gaze drifted to the hallway. That's when she noticed it. Her suitcase, packed, sitting by the door. She stared at it like it was a stray dog that had wandered in from the cold. "What's this?" she asked flatly. No tremor in her voice. No confusion either. Just the practiced tone of someone who expects to be the one asking the questions. I didn't answer her right away. I stood, walked past her into the kitchen, picked up the neatly stacked printout I'd prepared hours ago, and handed it to her without a word. She glanced down, her brows furrowed. The title page read, Cloud Sync Records, May-August, Screensh *TS, text logs, geolocation history, metadata from images she never meant for me to see. And at the back, a printout of a photo she'd clearly forgotten existed. Her, leaning against that same man at the fountain. Time-stamped, GPS tagged. She flipped through 2 pages, then 3. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't cry. And she didn't deny it. Her response? "You've been spying on me." I looked at her stunned. Not because of the words, but the audacity of them. "I was trying to find the truth," I said slowly. "Because you weren't giving it to me." She snorted. "That doesn't give you the right to go through my private stuff." I stared at her for a second, wondering if she truly believed that, or if she was just doubling down on the only defense she had left, shifting blame. "You lied to me," I said, "over and over. You went behind my back. You used me, made a fool of me, and still came home every night pretending we were fine." She didn't flinch. "I lied," she admitted. "But you watched me. Do you know how that feels?" That was when I realized something. She wasn't sorry. Not for the cheating. Not for the betrayal. Not for the lies. She was sorry she got caught. I laughed. A single, sharp breath that left my chest bitter. "You're not even pretending to be remorseful, are you?" She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them, and crossed her arms like a teenager called out for missing curfew. "I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated like a criminal," she said. "I needed space and you gave me suspicion. I needed time and you gave me surveillance." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. But then again I could. Because this wasn't new. This was the pattern. "I gave you trust," I said, voice tight. "And you broke it. You didn't need space. You needed a distraction. Someone to flirt with. Someone who wasn't married to you." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "You think I wanted to check your location? You think I wanted to dig through backups and sync logs? I did it because you stopped being honest. Because I knew, deep down, something was wrong and you refused to admit it." Jessica turned away, her arms still crossed, her jaw clenched. A long silence passed. I could hear her breathing shallow, fast. "I was suffocating," she said at last. "You made everything about control. The schedules, the routines, the constant check-ins. I felt like I was being managed, not loved." There it was. The pivot. Not a confession, not even a discussion. A justification. I walked to the kitchen table and picked up the final piece of this slow collapse. A manila folder. I placed it between us. "You want to talk about control?" I said. "Here's your freedom." Inside, copies of everything. Digital receipts. Car service records. Hotel check-ins under different names. It was all documented. She glanced at it and said nothing. Not because she didn't understand, but because she did. She knew the game was over. "This is what I'm taking to my lawyer," I added. Jessica swallowed hard. Her voice dropped half an octave. "So you're just what? Throwing this away? Just like that?" "You already did," I said. "You just didn't expect consequences." She looked around like she was seeing the house for the first time. Her eyes darted across the walls, the floor, the doorway. Anywhere but me. Like she could find a version of this reality where I didn't mean it. Where this was still negotiable. But it wasn't. I picked up the suitcase and wheeled it toward her. "You're leaving tonight," I said. "You can stay with him. Or at a hotel. Or at your sister's. I don't care. But you're not sleeping here." Finally, I saw something crack. Not guilt. Not grief. Fear. Fear of exposure. Of what this would mean when our friends found out. Her job. Her image. The version of herself she'd worked so hard to curate. I gave her a long look. Not angry, just done. "I hope he was worth it," I said quietly. She didn't reply. I walked out of the room and closed the door behind me. Not a slam. Just a quiet click. I lay in the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling more awake than I had in months. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clear. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, my first call was to a divorce attorney. Because this time I would be the one telling the story. I thought that once Jessica walked out with her suitcase, things would quiet down. That I'd finally be able to breathe, rebuild, grieve in peace, or at the very least be left alone. But I underestimated her. I underestimated how far someone will go to rewrite a story when they realize they've lost control of the truth. Started small, subtle. The first text came from a mutual friend, Lisa, someone who had always leaned more toward Jessica's side of our social circle. "Hey, just checking in. I heard things got tense. Hope you're okay. Jessica told me a bit, but I'd rather hear it from you." Told her a bit? I didn't respond. Not out of guilt, but because I already knew what Jessica had done. She wasn't just leaving. She was rebranding. Over the next few days, the trickle turned into a stream. Friends I hadn't heard from in months started texting, calling, messaging me with the same vague tone, concern mixed with confusion. Some were subtle about it. She said you two were going through a rough patch. Others were bolder. Jessica says you didn't let her have friends, that you were controlling. That word again, controlling. She was spreading it everywhere. First I was stunned. Then I got angry. And then I got smart. Because something inside me clicked. This wasn't just about saving face. This was preparation. She was building her side of the story before lawyers even got involved. She was poisoning the well, turning mutuals into allies, painting herself as the victim. And me, the overbearing, paranoid husband who drove her away. It was genius in a sick way. By the time the truth caught up, people wouldn't care. They'd already chosen sides. But I wasn't going to play defense. I went silent. I didn't respond to the texts. I didn't try to correct the narrative. I didn't post cryptic quotes on social media or share **TS to prove a point. Instead, I started collecting every message, every receipt, every lie she told publicly that contradicted what I had in writing. I wasn't petty. I was building a case. The real turning point came a few days later when I saw her Instagram post. It wasn't subtle. A photo, her and him. The man from the beach, from the park, from the affair she still hadn't named. They were sitting on a patio somewhere, sunlight hitting her hair just right. She looked happy, not in love but free. The caption? Finally free. Thank you for saving me. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I took a **T. Not out of emotion but out of habit now. Everything she said, everything she posted became part of the record. The comments underneath were a mix of support and ambiguity. So happy for you, Redheart. You deserve peace. You look radiant. Glad you got out. Out of what? A marriage she'd actively betrayed? A life she'd built with me, only to toss aside like clutter? She was rewriting our history, framing herself not as someone who'd made mistakes, but as someone who'd escaped. And the worst part? People believed her. Because the story she told was simpler, easier to digest. A woman stuck in a marriage with a man who made her feel small. A woman who found light again. A woman who reclaimed her joy. I watched it unfold without blinking. But behind the scenes, I was working. I paid to access archived location data from our shared phone plan. Traced every weekend trip she'd claimed was for training or industry conferences. Cross-referenced those with hotel receipts I'd pulled from our financial statements. Everything lined up, not with her words but with mine. Every lie had a timestamp. Every cover story had a crack. Even the photos she'd once hidden in a private cloud folder, the ones I'd stumbled onto by accident, now served as anchors in the timeline I was quietly building. And then there were the emails. Backups she didn't know I had. Messages she thought had been deleted from her account, but lived in archived form thanks to a sync with our old shared inbox. Emails to him, sent during work hours, middle of the day, coded, flirtatious, sometimes explicit, and once coldly practical. If he finds out, deny everything. He overthinks things. He'll spiral. Let him. I reread that one more than once. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded me of what I was dealing with. This wasn't just a betrayal of love. This was strategy. She had nized the parts of me I once made vulnerable to her. My anxiety, my tendency to retreat inward, my need to keep the peace. She knew how I'd react, and she was betting on silence. She thought I'd fold. Instead, I prepared. I even found the old shared Google Calendar we used early in our marriage. Back when we tracked everything from bills to birthdays. She'd stopped using it years ago, but she hadn't deleted anything, which meant all the fake events she'd added as cover. They were still there. Team retreat. She'd been at a spa. Client flight delay. She'd been at his apartment, according to the Uber logs. Mother's weekend visit. She never left the city. She lied in layers. Overlapping stories. Enough truth to sound plausible. Enough familiarity to be ignored. But I wasn't ignoring anything anymore. Then, one night, I got an email from her. Subject line, "Please." Just read. I hovered over it. The old me would have clicked immediately, would have read every word, would have dissected the tone, the punctuation, the subtext. But I wasn't that version of myself anymore. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer, and then I archived it. The next morning, she sent another message. This time through a mutual friend. A soft, guilt-laced plea. "Jessica says she misses how things used to be, that she never stopped loving you. Maybe you two could just talk?" I didn't reply. I took a **T, added it to the folder. By now, the timeline I'd created was nearly 60 pages. Organized. Chronological. With annotations and exhibits. A story told through receipts, photos, calendar entries, emails, and the digital footprints she thought she'd erased. But I wasn't collecting it for revenge. I was collecting it because she wasn't done. She was still trying to win the narrative. Still trying to play the part of the one who endured something. What she didn't realize or didn't care to consider was that I wasn't hiding in shame anymore. I was just waiting for the right moment, because she thought the worst thing I could do was yell. She was wrong. The worst thing I could do was tell the truth. Quietly, fully, and without emotion. And that moment, it was coming. In court, Jessica walked in like she still believed she could talk her way out of it. She filed a counterclaim, accused me of emotional control, claimed she was isolated. But she wasn't ready for the evidence I brought. My lawyer laid everything out. Messages, photos, travel logs, even hotel check-ins under her name. Her story crumbled in real time. The judge saw right through it. No alimony. No property split. The apartment? Mine. The car? Also mine. She left the courtroom in silence, her usual defiance gone. Not a tear, just the stunned realization that her version of the story wasn't going to save her. Not this time. A week after the ruling, he disappeared. The man she risked everything for? Fired. Their company uncovered personal charges, romantic getaways billed as business trips. His wife filed for divorce the same week. Jessica was left with nothing. No job, no partner, no fallback. At first, she posted self-help quotes. Then nothing. She vanished. Meanwhile, I moved on. Took a trip out to Montana. Got into boxing. Started breathing again. One night, she messaged, "I miss the safety I felt with you." I read it once and deleted it. She was never safe. She was trusted. And she destroyed that.